And you are live with Emperor Phi of Conservataria, and today's special guest is a Mr. Jacob Winograd. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but you can correct me if you want to.
It's a very good Russian pronunciation you got going there.
All right, let's try Jacob Winograd. Am I getting closer or worse?
Yeah, no, that's pretty accurate to
Okay,
the origin of the name.
Jacob Winograd. Let's just go with that. Is that better?
The way that it's pronounced in the dirty English would be Winograd, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we speak Americanish here, so feel free to translate as needed. All right. So, anyways, I don't know if you're familiar with Conservataria, but I'll just introduce you since this is your first time. Conservataria is the utopian paradise in which all of the good, intelligent human beings have run away to because we can't find anywhere, to hide anymore. And so, the three holy trinities of our nation are a Christian foundation of morality, a free market capitalist system, and a libertarian government, which I think you're pretty much a fan of all the above, correct?
Yeah, I would affirm all three of those.
Okay, so you're probably the first guest where you're pretty much already an honorary citizen and you just didn't even know it yet. So I'm probably gonna go pretty easy on you at first, just to let you get your toes wet and a warm welcome. And I'll pretty much save all the complaining and debating for like way down the road, like after we get all of our important stuff out of the way. Um, I'm vaguely familiar with your stuff, but feel free to go ahead and just introduce yourself. Tell me, the Cliff Notes versions of yourself and what your goals are, how people can get a hold of you, like what rustles your jimmies, all that stuff. Just feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm the host of the Biblical Anarchy podcast, which is a project of the Libertarian Christian Institute, part of our Christians for Liberty network. And I also host a lot of live streams through the Libertarian Christian Institute's Green Room live show. So I kind of do two shows with them, but yeah, I'd say the main thing I do is advocate for libertarian and Austrian economic ideas from a Christian perspective. I'm also, I try to stay up to speed with foreign policy and wars and current events, and kind of provide commentary on those things. And then I also have I've kind of dive a lot into matters of Christian theology, because I think theology sort of informs all of these things. So I don't know. I think I have my my toes wet in a lot of different spheres when it comes to podcasting and current events and things like that. And then I'm also active within the Libertarian Party, although that's not a badge of honor these days.
We'll get to them later. Don't worry.
But I'm still fighting the good fight, because I think that the Libertarian Party provides the best potential in terms of return on investment for political action. And I think that there can be a case made for Christians and libertarians, and I am both of those, to do political activism to push towards a more Christian and more free society. And I guess sort of just I'll end on this. I think that I think you've seen me sort of attempting to do this over the last month or so in my various debates and interactions. But I'm always sort of aimed at trying to dissolve, or I don't know the right word is, to sort of like end this sort of myth that exists that libertarianism and Christianity are incompatible ideology, like incompatible worldviews, or that they're at odds with one another. That
Amen.
freedom and virtue and Christianity are somehow opposed, I think, is uh, a unfortunate misconception that a lot of conservatives and Christians have, and I try to do my best. And really, that's the common project of everybody at the Libertarian Christian Institute, is to sort of give people the answers to these questions on various topics, and to try to make that case for freedom from the Christian worldview.
Well, I don't think I could have said it any better myself. And I like when someone else does all the heavy lifting and then I just nod and agree, because it saves me all the time and energy of having to present stuff so well. Um, so ditto, amen, and sing it and preach it to the choir, because everything you just said, I'm all of the above. So um, I've been doing this for a while now, just internet nonsense, debating, politicking and all that sort of stuff. Even way back in, like, I don't know, probably about 20 years now. I've been just trying to, like, keep a pulse on the nation and see what, like, the average Joe thinks, and, what we can do to influence culture and politics and all the yada, yada, yada. uh, a long time ago, when I was young and had all the energy and all the the blood sports and angry debating and all that sort of stuff, that's kind of what got me to where I am today. Because when I started, I was basically the disillusioned Republican type who thought if I vote for Bush, that's good enough, and that all my values will be represented, and that's good enough. But then as I got older and wiser, I realized that your votes don't matter, and all the candidates are uniparty, and it's just a great big nasty mess. And so as I got deeper into politics, I started down the libertarian hole, and Ron Paul got me interested in the whole libertarian ticket. And the more I debated, the more I realized I'm actually just like closeted ANCAP and didn't even realize it all along. But the more I debated with people, the more I realized that's my actual final goal position. But for practical speaking, I don't ever bring up ANCAP Istan, because I'm pretty sure by now you're old enough and wise enough to know that the first rule of ANCAP Flight Club is we don't talk about ANCAP Fight Club. And the second rule is you don't talk about ANCAP Fight Club, because every time any of us bring up ANCAPistan, all the idiots in the room will then completely misunderstand the whole difference between proposing the theory of ANCAP versus the practical policy, real world building of a libertarian government. And so, you want to chime in there, or?
Yeah, well, so I completely understand, of course, what you're getting at, and it's always it's a little bit like awkward to sort of bring these ideas up to, for lack of a better term, to the normies,
Oh yeah.
because it's just they look at you like you have six heads or something. But
or like you're a dirty commie or something, and you're like,
exactly.
what is this?
But I actually sort of decided when so I started out kind of doing more of, I guess you could say I was doing a Mott and Bailey approach for the libertarian ANCAP position, because I gave my original podcast when I started podcasting back in like 2021. I named it the Daniel 3 podcast. And I did that because it was like, well, it's not very obvious what I'm talking about. And so I would talk about the ideas, but not really label them, and then only label them here or there. But I would just try to talk about the ideas. But I came to find that, at least in my experience, what was happening was people would think that they were agreeing with me, but they didn't realize the extent to which I'm pushing for things. Like, you could tell someone, like, listen, I think that we can, have a lot of services be provided for by the market and not the government, and we should work towards privatizing more things. And they'll maybe agree with you in principle. I'll be like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. But then, like, if then you get like the oddball who goes, well, wait a second, I don't know, if you're taking that to the logical conclusion, wouldn't that be just abolishing all government or abolishing the state entirely? And you're like, well, that's the quiet part out loud I don't want to say. But I kind of got tired of hiding the quiet part out loud, right? So
And, and therein lies the problem. That's why we don't talk about ANCAP Fight Club, because to the normies, they'll never get it. You have to wait until they're smart enough to enter the debate before we actually debate, libertarians versus anarchy. But
well, I
if
don't
you,
know. I guess I took a different tact. That's why I sort of decided eventually, you know what, I'm just going to lead with uh, the Bailey all the time instead of just leading with the bot. And so I named my podcast the Biblical Anarchy Podcast. And
right,
now I guess I still sort of try to nuance it a bit and tell people, well, and it's not even that it's not dishonest. It's actually true. It just happens to also be strategic at the same time. Because
sure, sure,
what I mean with biblical anarchy is that I live first and foremost for the kingdom of God and not the kingdoms of man.
right,
And that's sort of like any Christian worth their salt should find that statement to be completely uncontroversial. So I'm able to but then I'm planting the word anarchy in their brain. And I'm at least like, what I'm doing is sort of like, so I actually came from the left. And so I actually understand a lot of how leftists move culture, and it's primarily through language.
yeah,
They take language and they sort of try to move the Overton window through obfuscating language and sort of like word association. And
of
that's what
course,
I'm trying to do. It's like, hey, if I can sort of like, normalize in people's vocabulary the word anarchy and biblical, and having the word anarchy be in the Christian mindset and not automatically invoke all the sort of misconceptions, then I'm creating fertile ground to have more meaningful conversations with them down the road. And I've been
right,
surprised.
right,
I mean, I've had moderate success with that. Like, I've had conversations with
sure,
people at my church, even like my pastor and my friends at church have stumbled upon my podcast. And yeah, of course, there's that initial, what the heck are you talking about? But if you know what you're talking about, you can just have those conversations with people. So it is sort of a,
catch
you know,
22.
it's a little bit of a good. Well, listen, you're always kind of playing as an ANCAP. You're always kind of playing a good cop, bad cop kind of game.
Right, right,
Because you're like, listen, privatize everything, including the judicial system.
right.
And people go, whoa, that's crazy. It's like, fine. All right, can we at least, I don't know, bring all the troops home? Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
sure, that's reasonable, right?
or
So,
in the Fed or
or end the
something
Fed, right,
practical.
yeah.
So, anyways, again, you and I are just going to be preaching to the choir back and forth for most of our exchanges. So we'll eventually get to the disagreements. But the only pushback I have on what you just said, again, my point is when I was young and vigorous like you and had this energy, I went through the exact same thought process that you just laid out. And after debating enough Andrew Wilsons and having to explain for the billionth time that the difference between anarchy and libertarian is that libertarians actually have government and you can enforce even a morally based system through that government, you explain it to him 10 billion times and he still never learns. He will never absorb those words into his thick skull. And so you waste your entire 3 hour long debate with these people trying to convince them that you're not just some, like, roaming barbarian tribe that does, human sacrifices and eats babies, because that's what anarchy is. And so I understand where you're coming from, and again, you're giving your audience way too much credit. You're like, surely there's at least 10% of the audience that will understand what I'm saying. But like I said, I've become so jaded and bitter over the years. I just pretty much assume everyone is evil and retarded, and then I let them prove me wrong. They're like, no, actually, I'm not evil and retarded. I'm like, oh wow, I found one human being that actually understands the words I'm using. And so that's why I said our exchanges are going to be a lot more pleasant and fun and less, antagonizing and all that stuff. But I've got plenty of criticisms, but we'll get to constructive criticisms later on. But I just wanted to get off, the right off the bat here to make sure that you and I are perfectly crystal clear with each other. That again, anything that you and I are going to disagree on, or it's just going to be splitting like the atoms of hairs, because it's like on this side of the atom, I see your point, and on that side of the atom, maybe there's a different approach we could take, but it's definitely not going to be like any sort of debate I would have with like, Dave Smith or Angela or your, Andrew Wilsons and your Ben Shapiro's and the Daily Wire gang and Crowders and all those other people, because we got so many layers of stuff to get through that by the time we get to the point, we have to like weed out like 80% of the population. So, which brings us to our wonderful topic of the Libertarian Party. I don't know if you can see your phone or not, but my background image is the scene in Ghostbusters 2 when the Titanic arrived, and it was it's got a big hole in it, and all the passengers are unloading from the ship. Um, that's kind of my general theme now these days. Whenever I talk to fellow libertarians about how well things are going politically speaking and how much progress we're making and all that sort of stuff. And so I don't want to be the Debbie Downer or anything like that. But like I said, I've been arguing libertarian for decades now. I've been trying so hard to see if there's an audience, if there's enough people that would actually follow along and be interested in changing our country and making it better. And you already know the end results of all those conversations, because this was back in the Ron Paul days when it was happening. It's happening. We were all losing our mind. We were like, "Yay, our country saved!" And then when we saw the voting results, we were like, "Oh poop!" We were like, "Oh, there goes any chance we had, saving this country." And so, sure, every once in a while, you'll get like a minor reincarnation of in the form of like a Dave Smith or whatever, where people are starting to go like, he kind of sounds like Ron Paul, and and so sometimes we get our hopes up a little bit, and just to have them completely smashed when he goes, psych, I'm not going to run for president after all. Here's Chase Oliver as a consolation prize. And you're like, oh my goodness. You're like, wow. It's like, I don't know what progress they thought they were making, but, you know, with that kind of turnaround, it's like, it's kind of embarrassing at this point. It's like I almost don't. I already told the whole panel verse. Anyone who follows my channel or my little adventures throughout all of these different channels I float around on, I've already told all my friends and family that I'm not defending the LP anymore for a while, because Dave Smith was the only person I would even sort of recommend to people. Because like whenever someone on the internet doesn't know what a libertarian is, I would usually just say, just go check out this dude named Dave Smith and see what he says. And Dave Smith's pretty good at laying out all the basics and being very broad and general, and to be sure to encompass the whole party and all. Which, by the way, is one of his weaknesses. Which I understand. Politics is politics. You have to make compromises at some point in your life. Otherwise, it's just two people in a room, and that's it. That's your party. And so you might have to open that umbrella a little wider, to let some other people in. And so that thus began like my final critiques towards Angela and Dave. I was trying to get more involved in the LP, but unfortunately Angela blocked me on Twitter, so she didn't want to hear any more to what I had to say about improving the LP. But I'll go ahead and spoil it for you here on the channel. But like I said, if you want to get her on back on, and if she wants a round two, I'll be more than happy to go over details, about PR and the image and the outreach programs and whether or not it's working or not and all that stuff. But But anyways, I don't want to sound too like nihilist or defeatist or anything like that. I'm not saying like I'm against the LP or anything like that, or I've completely given up on it or anything like that. I'm just saying I'm not going to actively debate for it anymore because again, you have to have at least like some sort of point of reference to point people at and say, at least start here and then see if you can, dig a little deeper into it and stuff. And so this interaction with you and me is basically kind of like before I head back to the bunker in the woods. It's like I just thought I'd give you a sporting chance to see if you feel like it is worth the time and effort to keep fighting the good fight, as you put it. And so I don't know if you're up and willing to try, just like a handful of series, like maybe like we can do like an Angela episode, a Dave Smith episode, and then just do like a recap and overhaul the LP episode, and then we can move on to the giant mountain we have to defeat, going from just getting the libertarians in the room to agree that now we need to start meshing it into this concept called conservative and what that means. And so I already have some feedback notes for you, by the way. I love the title, either libertarian Christianity or Christian libertarianism, whichever title you pick, that's fine. I get it. The only one slight flaw I see in that plan, and again, there's a reason why I picked the title conservative, because I don't know if you caught that book that Charles Cook wrote a while back. It was called the Conservatarian Manifesto or whatever. It's not like a big nod to him. I just blatantly stole that word because it just like magically fits, the utopia I was proposing earlier. And so the problem with just spoiling out the answers and saying that we are the party of the Christian libertarians is, again, now I'm starting to sound like Angela or Dave, and I'm saying, well, Jacob, I understand your intent, but we still want to keep the door open to, at least people that are not quite yet Christian, but they're definitely open to it and friendly with it. But that you might make it feel like certain people who are not Christians don't belong to this party and shouldn't even bother looking into it since they don't qualify or whatever. And so I like the word conservative because kind of like the America we have now. I'm all for the separation of church and state, which I'm guessing you are too. I'm not saying you're arguing a theocracy or anything, but the problem is once you like specifically call out those terms, you kind of like even like unconsciously kind of start weeding out people, even if you didn't mean to. And so, any thoughts on that, or?
Yeah. So let me make sure I understand the question. I'll kind of repeat it back to you in my own words. So I guess you're asking, how do we find the right balance in terms of how big the tent we want to make? Because on one hand, we would sort of ensure an ideologically pure libertarian party if the tent was whittled down to just Christian libertarians such as you or I, but that's obviously not politically practical because that's not going to, we're going to really dwindle the numbers at that point in terms of who's going to come into the party. But on the other hand, there's a danger in having the tent be too big, that you're diluting things to the extent that you end up with a nomination like we currently have. And so
Right.
How do we? Yeah. So I mean, and I think that the where that line gets drawn, I don't know if I have the perfect answer in terms of like a specific issue or a specific, like, I don't know, set of propositions that's like, here's how we would filter people out. There's not even a good way to effectively gatekeep in that way anyway. Like, I mean, the only sort of thing you have to do to join the Libertarian Party is pay monthly dues and sign the pledge.
Sure.
And I'm not sure that there's really much else you could do. I don't think you should change the pledge to be like, I recognize Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And, or just, like,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be practical or within the realm of possibility anyway. So
You're right.
I think what I'm suggesting is less of a we need to actively gatekeep, but more of a we need to change the party culture. And the way to do that is to sort of draw more people that are like us, or at least very similar to us, or at the very worst, who are like neutral
Yeah.
into the party
Adjacent friendly.
apparatus.
Yeah.
Right. Because like there's a lot of libertarians who I would say like they're not really Christian or conservative, but they're not they're not probably as upset or even maybe upset at all at the selection of Chase as like you or I would be.
Right.
But nor are they the type of libertarian who is like a Chase, who's out there waving around the rainbow flags and having all the goofy positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like that type of libertarian up to you and I, everything in between is sort of like what we need to be drawing in and sort of crowding, and then like that effect will sort of crowd out the other type of libertarian. Sure. I don't think that now listen, there are instances where the other type of libertarian, and we've seen examples of this in the past, where they will resort to I always forget the actual name of this. What's that? The something rules for radicals. You know what I'm referencing?
Not really, not off the top of my head.
It's
rules
essentially
radicals. Can I Google it real fast? Will that
help?
help?
I'm sure if you Google it real quick, I'm sure you'll find the name. I'm trying to remember the
a book by Saul Alinsky.
Yeah.
Rules for Radicals is the name of the book.
Yeah. So Alinsky's Rule for Radicals. Essentially one of those rules is, and you see a lot of this within the Libertarian Party, unfortunately, from the sort of, anti-conservative, anti-Mises Caucus style libertarians, where the way that they play the game is they don't care about the rules, and they try to basically just cause as much chaos and as much drag on the political machine as possible to basically exhaust people. And this is sort of the problem of what happened, how we got here, is that what allowed the Mises Caucus and sort of the Ron Paul wing of the movement to take over the party effectively with like 70% of the delegation in 2022 was that it was very understood and assumed that Dave Smith was going to run for president then in 24. That drew a lot of people in. When he was no longer doing that, a lot of people sort of, just kind of lost their enthusiasm for doing the work, because it's a grind. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who are in our camp, we have families, we have full-time jobs, we have our churches, we have other commitments competing for our time, and we also kind of have a sort of like a code of conduct and honor that we operate by. Yep. And so all of these things get taken advantage of by this other type of quote unquote libertarian, where they basically they can just sort of like so let me give you a couple examples. When I joined my state party, our board meetings, we had monthly board meetings, used to take 12 hours sometimes. Who has time to be like, yeah, let me just set aside 12 hours to be on a board call? Well,
yeah.
Personal privilege, and just dragging the thing out as long as possible because they're trying to win through filibustering. And like, again, that's the kind of, you can see at politics at the high level. There's a lot of sabotage like that. but you typically
Can you
wouldn't.
repeat the last two sentences? You just roboted just a little bit there.
Oh,
Try
yeah.
again.
So, you see,
Who has time for
so
board meetings? And then you said,
right. So it's you see this even at the highest levels of political activism, like even at like Washington D.C. levels and stuff. But the problem is like they're sort of expected because the parties hate each other. Whereas like you go into the Libertarian Party thinking, oh, we're all on the same side, but it's not quite that way.
right.
So we're operating at a disadvantage. So that's why a lot of what you've seen from like Angela and others in sort of the Ron Paul side of the party is they identify people who engage in that behavior and they try to basically remove them or to at least kind of nullify their ability to do things like that. But it's tough. But I think.
Oh yeah, it's the hardest job, really.
I think to sort of get at the heart of your question, which is like, how are we going to convince? I think you would agree with me that if we convince enough people to join, we can outnumber these people, crowd them out. Well, how do we convince them? Well,
That's
right
the trick.
now is not sort of this is not the fertile ground that we would want for convincing people. But I'm optimistic about where we will be in the next 6 to 12 months, and I'll give you my reasoning.
Okay.
I think that no matter how no matter who wins the election, the presidential race from the LP perspective is going to be disappointing, right?
No doubt.
He's not, even if we had a good candidate, people like RFK running are going to pull away a lot of the protest votes.
See, that just made me cringe a little bit when you said that he's a good candidate. I'm like, oh, good enough, I guess.
No, I meant
yeah.
I meant even if we had a good candidate, they would have a hard time going up against RFK. Is what
I
meant.
I thought you were saying he would be a good candidate.
No.
I was like, oh, maybe.
Well, no. Although to be fair, he would have been a better candidate than Chase, because if we're gonna, if we're gonna whore ourselves out, let's at least whore ourselves out to get some return. You know what I
mean? When they said Chase, I was like, you know what? Tulsi didn't sound so bad after all. Let's give her another try.
Right. And it's like if we're gonna play that game, might as well pick someone effective who's gonna pull in a lot of votes and money. Anyway, but so the LP race is going to be a disappointment. I don't even know if we're going to get more than 1% this cycle. It might be substantially less than that. And the silver lining is that even though it'll do some damage to the brand, people like RFK and others running Trump and Biden, it's going to drown. The noise is going to drown it out. Yeah. And I'm hoping that the damage there won't be that much need for damage control. Now, on the flip side, let's predict the possible outcomes of the 2024 election. Either Trump loses. Okay, that's a possibility. I think he's the favorite to win right now. But if he loses, this is going to be demoralizing to the right, because a lot of the dissident right, because they've been putting their hopes on him. If he loses again, man, to have to be like, you got to wait another 40 years to see if maybe he can try a third time a fourth time to get back in. And so at that point, you can, because right now, if you try telling people to vote LP, they're like, no, we should put our trust and hope in Trump because he's our best bet. Well, if he loses, that's off the table. Yep. Now, what if he wins? Well, if he wins, I think that, listen, let me paint the most charitable set of circumstances, right? Which I think this is sort of overstating what could happen. But let's say he wins and he does some of the things he promised he would do for the Libertarians. Let's say he frees Ross. Okay, great. That would be a huge win. There's no understating that. And then let's say he actually picks a Libertarian for his cabinet. All right. That's all well and good. And you could spin that as wins for the LP. But in terms of Trump and what he's going to do if he wins, I don't think that Trump winning is going to actually do anything to solve the issues that Christians and conservatives are concerned about in the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that 12 months in, people will realize, you know what, like the economy is still bad, the left is still running all of the institutions,
Mm-hmm.
and the solutions cannot be found from the federal level, from Washington D.C.
Right.
And so at that point, then the ground will want so in either scenario, whether Trump loses or even if he wins, I think that as time progresses, the ground is going to become fertile again to have conversations with the type of people that we would resonate with, to say, listen, like, how many more times are we going to run this experiment of hoping that, because and plus if Trump wins, he can't win a third time. So it's like, how
Right.
much can Trump do in 4 years? And then what? All that's going to, even if he got stuff done, which he couldn't get much done last time, and
Wah,
they're going to be
wah.
they're going to be just as they're going to be even more out to get him this time if he wins
Oh
than they
yeah,
were last time.
definitely.
So I think that the right now people are not going to listen to the message of decentralization, of nullification, of national divorce, and things like that. But those are still the correct political strategies to be pursuing, and those are counter the incentives of the Republican Party. And
Right.
so I think that, yeah, right now it's sort of like a war of attrition. We just kind of have to wait this out a little bit. But then once
Mm-hmm.
we wait out this presidential cycle, then we'll be back in a position where I think we will be able to effectively draw people into uh, the Libertarian Party apparatus, still sort of uh, championing the ideas of decentralization, nullification, and I still view the Mises Caucus as an effective tool for doing that. I also helped
Eh,
co-found.
I'll
I
debate that in a second.
That's
But
fine.
go ahead.
And then I also helped co-found the Christian Caucus because I wanted to be able to more strongly message on Christian grounds the things that I want to message. You know, saying like, hey, like if you are actually pro-life, okay, the Republican Party, other than helping to overturn Roe versus Wade, which I'll give, that's like the one good thing Trump did, but all that did was kick the battle kind of back to the state legislator, and then they're still trying to pass it on the federal level. So is that really a long-term victory?
Mm-hmm.
The best victory against abortion is actually going to be to focus on defunding Planned Parenthood, is going to be on fixing the economic incentives that are aimed at sort of incentivizing abortion, and at getting conservatives and Christians elected to uh, local governance and state governance to
Sure. Yeah.
nullify the laws that help provide cover for abortionists, to get on school boards, to sort of like de-wokify
Yep.
these public education systems that teach people that there's no value in the unborn, as well as to increase the rights of homeschoolers and micro schools and private. So like, even just on the issue of abortion of alone, I've sort of demonstrated how we have more options available to us at the local level, but the Republican Party is not the vehicle that's incentivized to do that local action.
Quick question. A second ago, you mentioned the Christian caucus. Is that basically LCI in a nutshell, or something, or what's that? How's that work?
So the Christian caucus,
Are you the head of it
definitely,
or something, or like who created
I'm
it?
a I'm a co-founder. So the founder is Kara Smith, and
Okay.
then myself and Jessica Tewksbury are the two co. So we all kind of founded it together, but Kara's the head of it. And the Christian Caucus is not officially affiliated with LCI, but it's kind of, if you remember the history of like the Mises Caucus created themselves and named themselves to sort of like push the ideas of the Mises Institute into
Mm-hmm.
the Libertarian Party. And that's kind of what the Christian Caucus tries to do. So like we do try to push a lot of what LCI does into the Libertarian Party sphere, in terms of the ideas. And then we focus on a lot of the same things that the Mises Caucus does in terms of decentralization, nullification, issue coalitions, but we have more of a Christian centric platform. So we focus more on abortion, on the rights of parents and churches and education, health freedom, medical freedom, religious freedom, things like that.
Right. Um, before we get any deeper, by the way, I want to kind of shift back to some real basic concepts. And again, this it's not just for me and you. I want my audience to perfectly understand like where I'm coming from and you and how we understand each other. So, one thing I have to ask, I'm sorry, I know it sounds annoying, but again, as much as I've talked to people online, this answer changes every day. So, we frequently throw around the terms the left wing and the right wing, which I think I pretty much know what you mean, but there may be just slight differences in where we draw that line and what that means. So, I don't. Can you see your phone right now? Or are you driving? And you can't look at your phone.
I can see it.
Okay. So I'll just read it to you because I don't want you sitting there reading off your screen. But I over the years, I basically had this like little litmus test that I pitch at it anytime people start talking about politics, just to see what they mean by certain words and stuff like that. And so I've come up with this funny little cheat sheet that I frequently bring up to see if anyone in the room is talking about the same thing or not. And I find it funny how even people who you think are exactly what you believe and vote for and all that stuff like that, they still won't get these words right. They'll still just toss around certain terms and stuff like that. And so I think there is obviously a point where this will become oversimplified, and obviously you can't categorize everything under the sun as black and white, left and right. But I do think it is useful to see how far we can push that limit just to save us time and effort of having to go through every single little nuanced conversation about, do you mean, socioeconomic, or do you mean just the social or just the economic? Do you mean, big government, small government, yada, 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 yada. And so, at some point, if like I said, when you're not driving and you just want to go through all of the details, I am curious if there's any of these terms that you object to, and I'll just read them off to you so you don't have to watch your screen while you're driving. So like when I say left wing, I mean like the immoral socialist authoritarians who are always subscribing to all forms of collectivism. They are the globalists who are always pushing things like democracy, and of course, culturally, they are the Marxists and completely subscribe to Marxism. They tend to be the politically correct, transhumanist, liberal, progressives, always engaging in ID politics, race baiting, alphabet gangs, victim mentality, the victim Olympics, and all that sort of stuff. And so then the opposing team is the right wing, which should be the moral, capitalist, anarchist, individualist, sovereign isolationists, the people who push for meritocracies, who support people like Ron Paul as opposed to Karl Marx, and are politically incorrect and believe in naturalism, classical liberalism, conservative based heteronormies. Is that, would you agree to all of those terms, or do you have any objections to any of those terms?
Just off of a initial glance, I don't think I would have much disagreement, although I would think it's worth pointing out that by this criteria that much of the Republican Party is functionally left wing.
Did you see the top of the chart? At the very top of the chart, what's the first
Yeah,
slide say?
okay, yeah, Democrat, Republican on the left. Yeah, so yeah,
So
so
that's always my trick question. This is how I can spot the conservatarians from all the normies, because all the normies automatically think I mean the Republican means right wing. That's the normal answer. Normies always make this mistake, and so again, I had told you before, I went through that same process when I was 20 years old and dumb and had no idea what politics was. I used to think Republican meant right wing. And so if I was a right wing Christian that believed in good, wholesome conservative values, I should vote for, George Bush or Mitt Romney or whatever, whoever is the, flavor of the week. And so, obviously that's completely wrong, but I had no idea getting into this how wrong those words are. And so I have to spend 90% of my time just explaining to my audience what I mean by left wing versus right wing, because when I just throw out that criticism that the left wing is killing our nation, we need the right wing to save it. The first thing they hear is, okay, so I should go vote for Trump, right? Is that what you're saying? And I'm like, no, you're so far off. I don't even know where to begin to explain to you how wrong you are. And so, and of course, then you lose, 90% of your audience right there, because that's what most normies think of when you use these words. And so, interestingly enough, you'll even meet some rather intelligent people. I got to introduce you to Pill Eater someday. He's a rather intelligent lad. He similarly like you, he's an ex left wing. By the way, ex left wings are the best people. They are the experts of left wing because whenever you ask a right wing person to describe the left wing, it's always the same old bullshit. It's like, they're democrats, and they want to, pussy out of all of our holy wars and stuff like that. Just the regular, Republican rhetoric. And so, I think that, as far as arguing all this politics and stuff, I have found the left wing, ex left wing people to be 1,000 times smarter and more intelligent when debating, discerning the difference between the left wing and the right wing, because at least they know what they're talking about. They see it every day. They live it. They know all the little, nuances and everything like that. But again, it's kind of funny to me because, again, I see most Republicans as also left wing. So I'm like, dude, you're not even on my radar yet. So you all look the same to me. Like I don't even discern the difference between a Bush or a Obama or whatever, because again, you're just talking about the uniparty and the deep state's attempt to sell this narrative to you that your vote matters, and all that sort of stuff. And so, um, I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page from this point moving forward, so I don't ever have to cover this ever again. Because as long as you understand what I'm saying when I say these words, then we're good. And I'll.
Yeah, I mean, I think and this might be uh, semantics, but like I sometimes don't like using the word isolationist only because there's baggage attached to that, and people assume that isolationist means that you oppose free trade, like you're pro tariffs and whatnot. Which
Okay, let me put it this way, Jacob. Even if it's a 60-40 split, are you 60% more for isolationism or globalism? Which one's your 60%?
um, well, I
Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't want
Do you understand the question?
I don't want to be too I don't know, autistic about the terminology here, but
It's not
I
a big
would
deal.
say but I would say, yeah, I mean, if you're going to ask me, would I prefer to, if I was like given two choices, one to live in a more nationalistic culture that was isolationist, maybe to the point of being a little bit against free trade, versus one that's promoting globalism, well, yeah, then I obviously would prefer the nationalist isolationist.
Let me make it easier on you. We don't even need terms. Given the two choices, either your choice is Switzerland or USA/China. Which foreign policy do you prefer?
Switzerland.
There you go.
Yeah.
That you're an isolationist. Welcome to the club, comrade. So, anyways, that's my point. That's my point. I know there are subtle nuances. There are libertarians who think, no, we don't have to, just become this fortress where we shoot anyone who gets too close to our Wakanda. I'm saying that I have zero interest in proxy wars, in world policing, in global bullshit with China, Russia, BRICS. I don't care. I don't care if it's the good guys. I don't want global discussions between the UK and France and Germany about how we should handle the Middle East or something like that. I don't give a fuck about any of those topics. All I care about from my government is to safely secure our borders, to make sure our country is functioning, safe, and prospering. And then, if you can convince me, we need to start opening channels to like the greatest people on earth. I've heard about these people. They're called the Swiss. And so in Switzerland, they have a great economy. They have all kinds of goods. We can trade with them peacefully without getting involved in proxy wars and stuff like that. Sure, I'm open to that. I'm not such an isolationist where I'm like, no, fuck you. We're never talking to any outsiders. Only America. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm not even interested in leaving the door open to any kinds of conversations about how we need to create wars in the Middle East, fight them from both sides, and then cry and complain about why people are mad at us or something like that. I
Well,
don't
yeah,
care
I
about.
would. So I mean, we're 100%
Yeah,
agreed on proxy wars
yeah,
and things like that. I'm assuming we would both be against embargoes and
yeah,
things like
yes,
that as
yes,
well.
yes, yes. All the above.
Um, right, and I'm also assuming you'd be against even like you're not pro tariffs to protect American
No,
businesses.
no,
Yeah.
no,
So
no.
so yeah. I think for me it's more of an allergy to the term, but just in terms of what you're describing, I don't really have any disagreement.
I would even start erring on the side that sounds like anti-patriotic or whatever. So, for example, I think there is a debate about whether or not the U.S. should have gotten involved in World War II, for example. That's my favorite hot topic.
Oh yeah, that's one that I haven't even got into with many people at my church yet, because that's like you got to gauge when someone's ready to have that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
conversation.
That's why I said. That's why I said rule number one, Jacob, is we don't talk about ANCAP Fight Club. So when we're in the Fight Club, you and I will spar over that topic. But it was funny because I got some rando normie off of the panel verse the other day to actually agree to that conversation. But anyways, we were talking about like honorable wars, that America has fought since the beginning of time, and they couldn't think of any, and I didn't bring up World War II, but a veteran did. He brought up World War II, and I was like, oh shit! So I was like, that would be an interesting conversation. Anyways, but I think you understand my point. My point is, again, as a citizen of Conservataria, you are free to go and take your friends and family over to any country you want and go fight with them on the front lines and do any battle you want. I'm not going to stop you. I'm just saying I'm not interested in you involving me in your personal crusades or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's like there's a difference between the individual citizen and the country. And so when we're talking about the libertarian government, we're speaking for the country. And so the country should not be getting involved in global politics or global gangs or, like you said, all these tariffs and trade wars and all this other nonsense. So I'm not interested. That's where I'm the isolation. I'm Switzerland. You guys kill each other, have fun. I'm going to be over here, tending my crops and maybe trade gold with some people, every other day, and hopefully not too immorally, because I don't want to sell weapons to people like committing genocides and stuff like that. But that's why we have Christian morality to dictate what we should be doing and not be doing in the
Now,
global theater.
this is again one of those conversations we can have because we're within the confines of an Ancapistan Fight Club, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the immigration topic is one, I guess, that is a corollary to this, which is something I've actually isolated back and forth on. I think I've at times been more closed borders, at times been more open borders, and I think where I'm at now is sort of a, well, if we had if we could imagine that all of America was functionally libertarian, then I would sort of be for somewhat of a qualified, less restricted immigration policy. But ultimately, I think that that'd be better handled by individual states than by a federal policy. I don't even think that the Constitution really gives the government
I'll give
more
you
authority.
I'll give you my 2 cents if that solves it for you quickly.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. How about controlled borders? How about we use the smart, intelligent people in our country to decide, first of all, do we have room for new people? Secondly, are they going to be a benefit to our society? Can we check them at the border to make sure they're not anti-conservatarians and they're not, devil worshippers or communists or whatever, just trying to invade the country and take it over? Um, and definitely not closed borders. I mean, closed borders is like just flirting with extinction, because just one bad flu could wipe out your entire country. And so, and brain drain. I mean, the reason why America is the greatest nation in the history of the world is because we had those open borders, allowing all of the people seeking liberty and capitalism and even Christian freedom, not just state enforced Christianity, but your own personal choice Christianity, which is real Christianity, by the way. But so that's what made America so great. So I'm definitely not anti-immigrant. By the way, my wife's an immigrant, so I'm definitely not anti-immigrant.
But it's a nuanced. I think we're actually pretty aligned. Then it's a nuanced topic. There's not like a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Because I sometimes really hate. Yeah, it's like, and I actually think a controlled or a regulated border.
Or how about
is
legal
probably
immigration? Would that be a good start?
Well, it's sort of like, so what we have now, and it's not a good term, but what we have now is sort of like anarcho tyranny, where we have a lot of rules about legal immigration, but then no enforcement against illegal immigration. And so
we're encouraging illegal immigration.
Right? And so it's all these perverse incentives. And I'm like,
So
well, what if we just had a very simple immigration system? And even if it wasn't like, and I don't like the open borders libertarians who are like, I think very idealistic on this. I'm like, listen, how about you just have a very easy path to come here, but you have a cap of how many come in, and then after that, then you have,
And how about just some standards, not
some,
like Harvard standards, but just some standards.
Like, well, and then
you don't
like,
want to kill us.
Well, right. Well, and then I would also say, like, if people want to come in beyond what the cap allows, then you could have something like a work permit or sponsorship system where, like, hey, like, if you want to sign a contract to go work for a farm or work for Walmart, then yeah, something like that would be fine. Like, but I feel like, I'm sure you would agree, it feels like libertarians are very autistically either like they fall too much into screw all immigration, or into no, like, we have to kind of like just ignore reality, where it's like, listen, what's happening at the border right now is not just a bunch of Mexicans wanting to come here for a better future. It's a lot of like state sanctioned sort of like messing with demographics intentionally, including like shipping people in from like, outside of Mexico and South America, shipping people in from Asia and China,
Venezuela.
It's like I was like, listen, I was like, I'm not saying I hate immigrants at all. I'm saying, like, you can't look at this and tell me, oh, it's just the free market. I'm like, that's
yeah.
So I think we agree there.
And like I said, again, this isn't difficult for good and intelligent people. We don't have to scratch our heads very long about this question. It's the evil retards that once they stop making noise long enough to point out we're not even enforcing our own laws that we have on the books right now. So step one, enforce your laws. Step two, if the immigrant system needs improving, improve it, and stop complaining about fighting wars in Ukraine and Israel and stuff like that. We've got way more important things to do than, again, fighting everyone else's wars for them and funding all of their security forces and yada yada yada.
Well, sometimes it's also like there's the libertarians who think that the order of operations doesn't matter, which I think is also very naive. Because I'm like, listen, if you ended all the wars, ended the war on drugs, ended all these like interventionisms, and we had a more, I guess, like, in your words, isolationist America, then I kind of feel like a more open immigration system isn't as off the table. But like acting like we should do that now in the current paradigm is sort of like, I mean, it's suicide.
Yeah. So that's why I feel like it's such a waste of your energy to try even debate these people because this is what you're up against. And that's why I said you and I can just preach to the choirs all day long, but all two of us agree, yay, we're gonna save the country now. So
Well, that's
it's like,
why
oh,
I appreciate, like, I think Dave Smith kind of tackles this
oh
the
yeah,
right way
yeah.
in the
I
public.
agree. I agree
Yeah,
with
like,
him on a lot of things.
yeah, because he just tells people, listen,
You agree with him? What you cut out? Hello, internet ate you, buddy. You may have to jump out and jump back in.
sorry, I think I cut out there. Can you hear me?
And now you're back on.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the way that Dave broaches the subject by just telling people, hey, how about we just bring all the troops home and then just enforce our border? That is kind of the right way to be moving things in the right direction at the moment.
That's exactly what I always say in every debate. But again, like I said, I agree with Dave Smith about 90% of the time. So the stuff I would debate with him is just to bring him into conservatarian and quit, beating around the bush about, like, well, we also got to include these guys too. But anyways, I understand he's a politician. He's got politics to do, and I understand Angela's a politician too. So I'm not being too hard on her. I'm just trying to help both of them understand probably one of the main reasons why the Libertarian Party fails. And so, speaking of which, I guess we'll just go ahead and get the elephant in the room out of the way. So going back to the LP, um, I don't want to be completely Debbie Downer, all negative nihilism and stuff like that, but as I said before, I'm pretty much out of the active discussions anymore with the LV because I I felt like we almost had a chance to be taken serious, almost as soon as Dave would have run for president. And even though we obviously were going to lose, I understand, but still, I was hoping for at least like something like a, 5%, 10% return on the election results. And so anything would have been a sign of hope, like, oh, yay, we're finally starting to see the little baby steps we need to start, turning that Titanic around, because it's like we're already halfway down to the bottom of the sea. But maybe we can, put some balloons in it and float it back up to the surface and then start turning it around slowly. And so, obviously with Chase Oliver, and this gets back. Remember earlier when I said, "Oh, I'll debate that," Mises Caucus claim you just said. So I haven't been following Mises Caucus very much. I heard about it, from the bird's eye view. I heard about it a long time ago when they're like, "We're taking over! Yay, we won the Libertarian Party!" And it's happening. It's Ron Paul Part 2. Dave Smith is totally going to be Ron Paul Part 2, and the Mises Caucus will make it happen. And so I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And that's why I actually told people while I was debating online, if you want to know about the Libertarian Party, go see Dave Smith. I will vouch for him. And so, so you just claim the Mises Caucus has got their shit in order and they're making things happen. And then Chase Oliver happens. So now what?
Well, let me qualify these statements a little bit, because I think I'm not accusing you of being bad faith, but I think you might be reading into what I said a little bit. I'm not saying the Mises Caucus has done nothing wrong, right? Like I think that there have been some strategic errors. I think that Dave not running hurt them, and the way that they sort of tried to pick up the pieces in the aftermath of that. I mean, obviously, like Chase Oliver is sort of the elephant in the room, and so obviously they haven't completely succeeded in everything they're trying to do. Now, there's a mixture. There's also things that they have succeeded in doing. So like 2018, 2020. Mises Caucus was around like 20 to 30% of the party. Then come 2022, because Dave Smith was sort of leading the charge, there was like 70% of the party. And now, because Dave Smith took a step back, kind of dropped off a bit, and it's closer to like 45, 50% of the party. So they're still bigger than they were, but they did take some blows. They did retain control of the national party in terms of like having a basically supermajority of all of the officer positions, so like chair and at large and secretary, treasurer, things like that. They have a super majority there. I think it's like 13 out of 17 seats on the LNC. So the National Party is still under the control of sort of like the Mises Caucus
Right.
side of things.
But at
Um,
the end of the day, all of these things you're saying, what does it matter to the general public? The only
well,
the only thing they care about is who is your pony. Which pony are you betting on? And if the answer was Dave Smith, we might be taken serious. If it's not, no one will take us serious. Like zero people, even 90% of the LP will take us serious now because they're like,
well,
dude,
so
that was
there's
the whole point, you know?
well, so that's where I would push back a little bit. And part of this might be that the Mises Caucus, although I think they have been saying this the whole time, I I, I think that the message just hasn't reached as far and as wide or sunk in as deep as they wanted it to. But the whole point of the Mises Caucus was not just to take over to run someone like Dave Smith. And even insofar as it was, that was always to then be used as a sort of fuel to push forward the actual mission, which is much more aimed at the local level, which is aimed at decentralization, nullification, and issue coalitions. Those are like this. I used to be a Mises Caucus organizer, so I understand like the ins and outs of what the Mises Caucus does very well,
When
and
you,
that was
when you say local level, are you referring to examples like the New Hampshire Free State Project or something like that, or what are you talking about? Local levels.
so local level elections that would be so it'd be positions of that have like the ability to enact either nullification or some sort of resistance of like state and federal tyranny. So we're talking about getting on your city councils. We're talking about sheriff. We're talking about mayor. We're talking about school board. In certain places, it might also be constable. Uh, there might be
All
other
all the way up to governor, or is it not that
well, so
ambitious yet?
that's a little more. So that's like state level, and so the Mises Caucus focuses on the municipal, county level stuff.
So
The
city and county
federal,
is what you're saying, basically.
yeah, there might be, and I think the Mises Caucus position was always that when it comes to statewide races, so there's like district reps and things like that can be winnable, but it's kind of like at that point, the bigger you get, the less the running becomes about winning, and the more it becomes about well, there's two things. One, it can just be a platform to message about the local stuff and the messaging and the party, or it's about using the position as a sort of spoiler effect for the Republicans or Democrats to kind of like you know play kingmaker to be like, hey, like
Mhm.
if you want these independent third party voters, uh, you know, here's like the issue you need to put on your platform on your campaign run on or something like that.
Right.
But really the bread and butter is focused on that local level. It's about like so. Are you familiar with like the like nullification, like the 10th Amendment, things like that?
I may have heard it once in my life and completely forgotten about it, but you can
So so
refresh me.
so you can really learn a lot about this by checking out the 10th Amendment Center. Guys like Michael Bolden run that, and also Michael Meharry, who is part of LCI, is also part of the 10th Amendment Center. But uh, the 10th Amendment essentially is the and I don't have like I'm going off memory, I'm summarizing, so I might
Yeah.
not get it word for word, but it's
Sure.
basically that like any powers and rights not specifically designated to the federal government lie with the states and the people.
Sure.
And so what that allows is a sort of precedent where if there is a law on the books at the federal level or even at the state level that's like unconstitutional, you can nullify that. Because actually what allows a lot of these federal and state laws to go on being enforced even while they're unconstitutional is like so you have two options. You can either try to elevate it to a court to get that law deemed unconstitutional. That can be tough. The other option is to essentially nullify it at the local level, which cuts off the ability of the local law enforcement to actually enforce those laws. So a lot of the drug decriminalization that happened over the last couple decades used this kind of process to basically say that these laws were unconstitutional. They were like, in these local areas, law enforcement can enforce
Do,
laws
do,
against.
do you have any examples of something that you've done or witnessed or observed or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so the founder of the caucus, Michael Heiss, actually before the caucus was founded, he did this at his in his township, and he had I think it was psychedelics were decriminalized in his county. Um, there's on the Mises Caucus website. There's a list, and also on the 10th Amendment Center website. There's a list of just all sorts of different examples where this has taken place, where they've done things like they've passed Second Amendment sanctuaries, where basically it's like, hey, like all these unconstitutional gun laws can't be enforced in these areas.
Right.
You can do this with criminal justice reforms to pass things that limit, that limit qualified immunity, that limit no-knock raids and things like that. Like Breonna's law was a big thing that was pushed and passed in certain areas.
That might be an actual effective grassroots approach to this system, and so I've heard about this before, and I've almost kind of wanted to touch grass and actually go out and meet people again and see if it's worth crawling back into society and seeing if any progress has been made. I just remember a long time ago when I was just kind of like periphery interested in the whole Libertarian Party. I would just see like, is there even an office near me or anything like that? And I couldn't even find like a Libertarian office like in my entire county. So I'd have to like take like a 4-hour drive to like my state metropolis to find a little Libertarian Party broom closet or something. And so I was like, I don't think anyone's ever going to take this stuff seriously when they can't find it or even know it exists. But it sounds like you're familiar with communities where they are way more active, and you got these people like really making changes and getting people together and stuff. So that would be neat.
Yeah, like back during the lockdowns, the Mises Caucus so I live in Pennsylvania. Well, over in Philly, they started a little group called Don't Tread on Philly, and they were out there protesting the COVID mandates, and actually they were on their way to helping to organize like civil suits and things like that, and even trying to get bills proposed to nullify the stuff. Now, fortunately, the state eventually just backed off and stopped doing it. But this happened actually all over the country. A lot of places where these laws kind of got backpedaled were because there was a lot of people, and there was it was issue coalitions, right? So you had you had like Republicans and conservatives and independent libertarians were all kind of joining together and building these grassroots initiatives to push back on things like that. And sometimes you don't even have to get something signed into law or even take it to court. Just the collective pressure enough gets the politicians afraid, and they back off and don't follow through with what they're doing. So I mean, that's kind of what the Mises Caucus is focused on, and I still think that's a viable strategy to focus on from the position of a third party, where you're just not going to win federal and statewide elections.
Okay, there you go. See, you just changed my mind. See, I already had a preconceived idea of how I felt about this Mises Caucus thing, and you just convinced me that they are making progress and they are doing valuable work that we should continue to support and stuff. And so I'm sorry I came off kind of bitter and jaded when I said their one job was to get Dave Smith to run for president, and they failed that one job. And so maybe I oversimplified it and was
it's definitely disappointing, right? And like the hope was that Dave running would, because listen, there's two things you want to do simultaneously. You want to do that grassroots work, but then you want, like, any strategy, including grassroots activism, like, you need more people.
Yes.
And so the idea of Dave running was that, well, what if we had a guy going across the country talking about these ideas, drawing them into the party, drawing them into the Mises Caucus, and then we can funnel them into this local grassroots work.
Right.
So now, obviously, that the national component didn't work out because they got chased, but the local level stuff, that's still going on.
Okay. Okay.
So it's not like a total. Again, I'm not saying I'm not going to sit here and stand for everything the Mises Caucus has done and say
But
like
they're the
that.
best option. They're the best option. You sold me. You convinced me.
Right, right,
They are the best option.
and what we do at the
Agreed.
Christian Caucus is effectively the same stuff. Just we kind of do it with, and honestly, a lot of our membership is they're members of both. Like
Right.
a lot of members of the Christian Caucus are also members of the Mises Caucus, and we work together and have a good working relationship on a lot of things. So,
That's great. Great to
yeah.
hear. So, okay. Well, I was gonna be all poo-poo and Debbie Downer, but you cheered me up. So, congratulations, Jacob. You've convinced me that humans are not all evil and retarded. There's
No,
at
and like I
least
said,
one good, intelligent person. So,
and like I said, it's
congratulations.
like the chase ticket is disappointing, but all that means
Definitely.
is sort of like, like the next 6 months are going to suck a little bit. But then
Definitely.
afterwards, like, because no matter who wins the presidency, like
Hmm.
people are going to get back to work after November. By the time we get to like March or April or June of next year, it's going to be like, oh wow, it's more of the same,
Right.
right?
Right.
Right. And so at that point, that's when that messaging is going to pick some steam back up to be like, you know what, like, do you want to be stuck kind of every 4 years, hoping that this time when you vote for the lesser of two evils, that turns the country around?
Yeah.
Or do we want to start taking our country back at the local level? And so, like, the mantra of the Mises Caucus is it's a decentralized revolution.
Hmm.
And I still believe in that. I think that actually plays a lot into even our roles as Christians, that we're supposed to be taking, like, the local church is supposed to be an institution that helps lead the
Hmm.
communities in what is right, and helping to kind of pick up, like, the church should be doing what the state does in terms of like helping to feed the poor and helping the
Right.
orphan and the widow and stuff like that.
Charity.
And some Christians will kind of be like, well, shouldn't we just focus on doing stuff at the church? And I'll be like, listen, don't ever stop doing things with your church. But doing things at the local level in politics is not like a zero sum game with doing things with your church, because there can actually be a lot of overlap between municipal level governments and religious organizations.
If we're doing it right, we
Right,
would. So
right.
yeah, yeah. I understand the knee jerk reaction. This is where the butthurt atheists are like, this sounds like you're trying to violate the separation of church and state, and you're trying to create a theocracy. And that I
Right,
don't care about those
and
people,
and
but I'm
I
like,
tell
yes,
them, find, first of all, find the word separation of church and state in our constitution. It doesn't fricking exist.
uh,
And yeah, it's like
and
separation
read
of
a
church
history
and
when the country was founded by Christians for Christians. So we were just trying to be nice about it and not force it by government. But it wasn't like a mostly atheist nation that was trying to stay secular or anything like that. So
well, no, and like the church should not be the state, in terms of like, we don't want the church running the police. We don't want the church running law enforcement or running security or things like that. Like, the church needs to focus on the mission of the church, but that doesn't mean that the church doesn't have an active role in leading society and leading communities, and even advising and assisting the local level governments in what they're trying to do.
right, right.
Like that. So that's kind of the where you have that overlap between libertarianism and Christianity, and it's kind of that you're kind of building what you're advocating for, right?
Yeah.
That conservatoria, society that we want to
Yep.
see.
All right. Well, you ruined my whole stick. I was getting ready to beat you back with some obvious examples. So let me go ahead and get it off my chest, so I don't ever have to bring it up ever again. Give me just your short 2 sentences thoughts on all these people I'm getting ready to say. We spoke of Chase Oliver, but you didn't tell me your thoughts and feelings on it. Go ahead and tell me your take on him.
I've met Chase. I don't have anything personal against him, but I think that he represents everything that I thought was wrong about the old Libertarian Party. Doesn't understand the moment we live in, doesn't understand the connection between culture and tyranny, and then obviously has just really bad positions on certain issues.
Okay. Tell me your thoughts, and by the way, you can tell if you feel like disclosing this. I'm not going to force you, but if you want to share with us, go ahead. Would you vote for this person? When I ask you when their name, just tell me your feelings about them, and then finish it with, "Would you vote for this person?" Um, Joe Jorgensen.
Joe, I would vote for Joe, although she's still not. She's kind of more like what I've described earlier in terms of like that neutral libertarian, like doesn't really understand things correctly either. But I don't view her as being as bad.
Okay. And then what was the other one? Gary Johnson, I think was his name.
I would have voted for Gary Johnson in 2012, but in 2016 he had Bill Weld on his ticket, so that's a no.
And then your overall thoughts into the quality of the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, I mean the Libertarian Party is it's still this might be a little bit of a controversial statement, but I think it's still in a better position today than it was in 2016. Listen, I mean, think about even in biblical history how oftentimes God's people would make a step forward and then they'd stumble, right? Like, so listen, there's a little bit of a stumble here, but all that means is that the people on the side of good within the Libertarian Party just have to regroup, recommit, double down, and keep up the good fight. Like I said at the beginning, we still have a lot of things going for us, like the changes to the platform that were made in 2022, where we abolished the abortion plank, thus making the LP party not a pro-choice party. That's still in effect. And I would argue that the Libertarian Party is the only truly pro-life party in the country, because we're the only ones who are actually coming with the solutions to dismantle the system that props up the killing of the unborn.
Well, that's something. All right. Well, you're from now on, you're good cop and I'm bad cop. So because you can convince people there is hope and stuff like that, and so
well, and I do got to hop off here, but I'll just say,
I was about to say,
I mean,
do you have to go, or do you want to go for a couple more minutes, or?
Well, I do have to go, but we can certainly do this again if you want to talk about more of this stuff. I'm happy to do it.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously, if you and anyone listening wants to figure out where they can get plugged in, whether it's the Libertarian Party at the state or local level, whether it's the Mises Caucus or the Christian Caucus or all three of those, you can find me on Twitter at Biblical Anarchy, or shoot me an email. The email is jacob@libertarianchristians.com. And you can reach me both avenues, and then
do you want to put that in private chat, and you want me to post it in the comments for you, or?
Yeah, here I'll. So Jacob.
Or you can put anything in the comments as well on the YouTube channel. You can just put it in the comments, and I'll
okay, yeah. I'll just send me the YouTube link when this is done, and I'll put it in the comments there. Yeah, so you can reach out to me on Twitter or through email, and I'm connected enough with all of the different party apparatuses that I can help you get plugged in and figure out where you can help, because we listen, like, although we're still doing good work at the local level, we're not happy with Chase, and we want to have a different result next time. But that means that we need more people who have the same convictions as you and me to get some skin in the game and push out the degenerates that want to soil the tradition of liberty, that want to soil these great ideas with, just in a cover for being degenerate, right? Like we don't want that. We want to, we know, or if you don't know, you'll know in a year. We're still going to know that the Republican Party,
very soon,
the Republican Party is not a viable option, because the Republican Party, as your chart showed earlier, is really just the controlled opposition of the leftist uniparty in our country.
Yep. So. Okay, so we'll leave it on this cliffhanger. It sounds like Jacob is still on the fence. Does he want to become a citizen of Conservataria, or is he going to fall to the dark side with Andrew Wilson? We'll have to tune in next time to see.
Yeah, we can. Well, listen. I like Andrew insofar as I've talked to him, and I think he's kind of funny, and I like debate, and I enjoy debating Andrew.
I can debate you. So if you like debate,
yeah. But
I'm your Huckleberry.
but listen, there's nothing in that debate whether I did poorly or well or in between. I think I had a mixed performance like Dave did. But there's
Hmm.
nothing that changed my mind on my fundamental principles, and I'm still on team conservataria or team Christian libertarianism.
I'm gonna bring
So
you over to Conservataria. We're already on the same team. It's marketing. You need to work on your marketing because again, words matter, and you can scare off your audience before they even hear your message. So, um, but spoilers, Conservataria is Christian libertarianism. So I don't care what you call it, but it's just politics. But anyways, I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope to have more conversations with you either on my channel or your channel whenever either one of us have free time. I'm game. So if you randomly catch me on the panel verse or whatever, I might try to summon you to just random conversations if you're interested. Because sometimes we talk about religion and politics and stuff like that, and I think you would be a welcome contribution to some of those discussions. So
yeah, sure.
I'll try to randomly catch you when you're not at work, church, or rebuilding society, or school, or taking care of kids, or grocery shopping, and all those other things. But that 30 seconds you have of free time, I may try to randomly catch you if you're available. So
Sounds good.
thanks for your time, brother. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, appreciate it. You too.
All right, peace out, man.
Yep.
All right, so that was Jacob Winograd with the Libertarian Christian Institute, and his channel is called the Biblical Anarchist Podcast on YouTube. You can see it scrolling at the bottom of the screen. I posted it in the comment section, and so he probably has all of his contact info and all his Twitters and websites and all that stuff if you need to find it. The more he comes back, I'll just plug all of his stuff because he is one of the real citizens of Conservataria. So I don't know how much time and energy I'm going to put into this movement, but we kind of touched on a lot of the basics, and that's why I wanted to get this out of the way because I've been hinting at it a lot recently, but I haven't gone deep into the weeds of what I'm actually talking about, and so this is more what the conversations would sound like if I was taking anyone serious. And so I take him very seriously. And so there you go. He did send me a link. I'll post that real quick for him too, real quick. Just give me a second here. Do 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 do. Looks like he wanted me to post his Jacob at libertarianchristians.com is probably like either his email or something. I don't know. Um, Let me just show that real quick, just so anyone who can't see the comments sees it. That is one way to get a hold of him if you're interested in any of the things we just discussed on this show, including the Emperor of Conservataria. He is basically the audience I've been trying to find, and it's sad that I found him just now as I'm leaving the internet again because I'm so burned out and just I have lost all interest in the panel verse and all their stupid drama and arguing with evil retards about the difference between anarchy and libertarianism and arguing about whether or not libertarians can have morals or not, and because again people just don't understand anything that's more complicated than 1 + 1 = 2. So if you're smart enough and you've made it this far, I guess there's hope. Hang in there. There's some of us somewhere. You're welcome to come visit me at my bunker in the woods if you can make it past all the guard towers and the electrified razor wire and the packs of wolves that guards the bunker. But if you make it that far, we'll have a beer. We'll talk about religion and politics, and I may even eventually share with you the mysteries of the universe, including the one true church of the one true religion. And so, this is your Emperor Phi signing off.